So we're going to try to give, yeah, it's recording. We're going to try to give a little bit of an understanding of what Lumdus is. And the truth be told, that if you ask two people in one yeshiva what Lumdus is, you'll get at least two opinions. If you ask two people in one yeshiva and two people in another yeshiva, you get four opinions, and it goes on and on. I'm going to give you my perspective on Lumdus and why I think it's so important. As young men who are coming into Shana Aleph, Gemara here is going to be a major part of your life. And there are many questions to ask. Why Gemara? And I'm not here to answer those questions. They're very, very profound questions. But I think if there's a chance that you'll enjoy Gemara for the rest of your life, then the key to success is Lumdus. So what is Lumdus? So anyone who wants to jot this down, you could even write it maybe on this paper if you have a pen, or you could borrow my pen, anybody who wants it. The definition of Lumdus here is analysis. What is analysis in the context of Lumdus? Analysis is what's called a chakira. Okay, then, so I should write this on the board. Chakira is chet, kuf, yud, resh, et. Who can tell me what he thinks is a chakira? Can you guess? Anybody? Just take a wild guess. What is a chakira? Or when you see yesh lachkor, we should offer a chakira.
Answer?
What do you say, an answer?
Or opinion?
No, what do you think?
The word is familiar. Is it a derivation?
I don't know that chakira means derivation. I think derivation would be drasha, like lidrosh is to derive, or in Aramaic yalfuta. Go ahead. Say again?
It's coming from chok, like law.
No. It has nothing to do with the word chok. A chakira is when you take a statement, let it be a principle, let it be a halacha, and you break it down into two possible ways. So if you have a flow chart, you'll see a big box, and then you'll see that from that box there are two subdivisions, or two, shall I say, definitions of what that principle is. That's called a chakira. So in every chakira, you'll have at least two possibilities. You may even have more than two possibilities. So we'll have possibility A and then possibility B. And those are two ways of looking at the very same halacha. I'll give you an example. Let's say I would tell you that women will sit in this room during davening. And you'll ask me, why is the halacha that women have to sit in their own room? Why can't they sit with us in our room? And you'll give me two possible answers. One answer will be tefillah, meaning for concentration purposes, if the men and women are separated, there's a greater possibility of focus, of concentration, the opposite of distraction. The other way of learning it has nothing to do with tefillah. It's just one, shall I say, example of a general mitzvah called tzniut. Tzniut means that, we separate the men and the women. Are you following me why this is a chakira? And the nafkamina, the difference is always going to be whether we take one approach or the other approach. So you want to write down the following. Every chakira, by definition, which is, again, two perspectives or two explanations of a certain halacha, every chakira has to have, by definition, a nafkamina. What's a nafkamina? That's every Arabic, right? A difference. There's got to be a difference la halacha. If you can't offer me a nafkamina, then we have no barometer by which we can gauge a chakira. So again, it's like a scientific study. You want to know why there's a certain reaction when you put together two chemicals or two molecules, or whatever it is, and you have one approach and another approach, and then you want to test it out. There's always got to be what's called a system of verification. Is that familiar to you? If you have any, even superficial knowledge of science, you'll know that science is based on a system of verification.
Can I turn on the air?
Please, you know how to do it? Okay. Okay. Now, what does it mean, Lumdus, from the Parsha? We're going to look into the Parsha, and we're going to try to focus on one halacha in the Parsha, and we're going to try to create a chakira and see if we can come up with two definitions of that halacha. Okay. Now I have another question for you, and see if you're with me on this. Every mitzvah aseh, every positive mitzvah, requires what before we do the mitzvah? Anybody?
Prevention?
A brach, correct, a brach. And that brach is called birchat ha-mitzvot, or in Ashkenazic, birchas ha-mitzvah. And a birchas ha-mitzvah means asher kidshanu mitzvosav v'tzivanu, and we have to recite a brach. Now, in this week's parsha, we're going to have a very unique mitzvah called hafrashat trumot umasrot. Have you heard of it? Everybody heard of it? No? It means that when you have foodstuff that grew from the ground in the land of Israel and you harvest it, then you have to take off something for the Kohen, that's called Truma, and you have to take off something for the Levi, and that's called Maser. Now, in addition to that, there's another category of Maser, I don't want to confuse you because it's not so relevant for us, called Maser Oni. And during certain years of the Shemitah cycle, which is a 7-year cycle, instead of Maser Sheni, we have Maser Oni. So in any event, we want to now separate Truma. We want to separate Maser. Are we fulfilling a mitzvah when we do so? Everybody? Yes. If so, then what do we need before we do the Hafrasha? A brach. So in this week's Parsha, when a person brings his Maser and his Truma and so forth and so on, and there's another halacha which we're not going to get into called Biur. Anyway, he has to recite a a text that's in the Torah in this week's Parsha. That text is the Jew claiming that he did everything that he was commanded to do. Asisi kechol asher tzivisani, the pasuk says, I have fulfilled everything that you told me to do, God. And Chazal in the Gemara asked the following question: Why do we add these extra words? I have fulfilled everything. What's the everything? Kechol asher tzivisani. So the Chazal say that I recited the bracha. Again, every mitzvah requires what, everybody? A bracha. And now I'm coming with my truvas and maisus, and I'm declaring in front of the Almighty, I have fulfilled my mitzvah in its entirety, in its totality. I even recited what? The bracha. Okay? So what we have in this week's parsha, first of all, I have to ask you, I didn't even ask you, what is this week's parsha? Ki Tavo, very good. We all know it's Ki Tavo. So what is the mitzvah in Ki Tavo that we're going to focus our attention on? The mitzvah of bracha. Because the source for the mitzvah, the obligation to make a bracha before I do a mitzvah, which is called Birchat HaMitzvah, is going to be Parshat Ki Tavo in a section called Vidu Masrot, otherwise known as Asiti Kechol Asher Tzivisan. Okay. Now I get to my second introduction. This is one of 5 volumes. And again, if you have a pen, you might want to write this down. It's called the Minchas Parsha. For me, this sefer is unknown. I don't know this sefer. I looked at it once. But Rabbi Citron, you know who Rabbi Citron is, so he recommended this sefer. If you're teaching Lumdus on the Parsha, this is a good. So we have this here in the base medrash. You'll find it Lev for Bet, 5-volume work. This is the volume on Torah, Sefer Torah. And who wrote the Minchas Osher? So you might want to write this down. His name is Rav Osher Zelig Weiss. Okay, then he comes from a great family, an incredible family. His father survived the worst of the worst hell in the Holocaust. And it's a miracle that his father survived. His father was a young man on the death march together with, if you ever heard of him, the Kloisenberger Rebbe. And the Kloisenberger Rebbe said to Rabbi Weiss, that's the father of this author of this Minchas Asher, he said to him, look, if we survive the war, I need your help. So Rabbi Weiss, young Rabbi Weiss, he was 16 years old, he says to the Kloisenberger Rebbe, what do you mean you need my help? I got to get back to yeshiva. It's been 5 years since I was in yeshiva. So Kloisenberger Rebbe said, no. You're going to help me collect bodies and bury them. So just again, I'm just giving you not even the tip of the iceberg of the father of this author. This Rabbi Weiss came ultimately with the Kloisenberger Rebbe to America, and he raised a family here in Eretz Yisrael of, I think it's 8 children. All of them are scholars. This is probably the most, or the second most at least, famous scholar in the Weiss family. His name is Rav Asher Zelig Weiss. And if we'll be lucky, we can invite him here to give us a shir, and we'll get to meet him personally, face to face.
From Riverdale?
He's not from Riverdale. I don't want to burst any bubbles here, but no, he's not from Riverdale. He's originally from Borough Park and made Aliyah. He lives now in Ramot. He has a big shul and a big following, and he has a kollel. And during COVID, he answered questions that no one else could answer for like a year and a half. Great scholar, incredible. We're going to touch on the tip of the iceberg of Parshas Tavo. So if you have an idea, we're going to try to study 4 pages from this gigantic book, which is 1 volume on Sfar, just to give you an idea how vast we're talking about. Okay. His brother is married to my wife's first cousin. So we have a little bit of a connection to Rabbi Weiss. But again, I'm not familiar with his foreign. But I sat and I read a little bit on Tavo, and I saw that he's focused on the idea of Birchat HaMitzvah. So I was very excited about it. Now, I have to add another introduction that's very, very important. And that is what's called Zman HaChiyuv, if you want to write that down. Every mitzvah has a chiyuv, an obligation, but it also has what? A zman chiyuv. Like, for example, if I were to put on tefillin in the middle of the night, would I fulfill my mitzvah of tefillin? Absolutely not. And if I would observe the Shabbos on a Monday, would I fulfill the mitzvah of Shabbos? Every mitzvah has a zman. Take, for example, in the case of Chol HaMoed. In the case of Chol HaMoed, let's say Pesach, I have a mitzvah to eat matzah. I also, on Chol HaMoed, have a mitzvah to bring certain korbanot if the Beit HaMikdash was standing.
Actually, this said it's confusing a little bit. A lot of Chassidim, especially Chabad, don't pay attention or hold by Zmanim. You would have said here.
That's an excellent question.
How did that develop?
I could just tell you this. In my personal life and the way I was educated, Zman HaMitzvah is very, very crucial. Hasidim perhaps have a concept called Lamala Min HaZman, above time. Now, I honestly don't know, I'm not the expert on how to justify that or reconcile that with the halacha. The halacha says Zmanim are very important. Okay, let's get back to the question. Yeah.
If that's so, then how can women be under pro mitzvahs for as long as ma'akev and still have mitzvahs?
Right. So there are 2 answers to your question. First of all, there are many mitzvahs that are not time bound. That means that there's a constant, perpetual chiyuv of that mitzvah. For example, Talmud Torah is a mitzvah which applies 24/7. There's not a moment of time where the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is excluded. And I can give you many, many examples of that. Yirat Hashem and Avat Hashem. These are mitzvahs that are above time. So women and men are equal in those mitzvahs. However, other mitzvahs depend upon time. Now, there are many mitzvahs that even though they depend upon time, women are obligated. For example, Shabbos or Yontif, women are included. So it means that the rule that women are exempt from time-bound mitzvahs has exception. So far, so good? Okay. Now, would it make sense if I were to wake up, it's still nighttime, make a bracha on my tefillin, and then put my tefillin on? Would that bracha be a meaningful bracha when it was recited before the Zman Hachir? You want to write that down? Here's our Chakir. Is the bracha an inherent part of the mitzvah, or is the bracha a separate entity? So this Chakira, my friends, you could take through all of Shas and apply it in almost every sugya in Shas. That's why I think Lumdus is so important, even though you guys are interested in the Parsha and what the Lumdus. Because Lumdus will give you the key to unlock the mysteries of the Talmud. And it will make Gemara learning much more exciting. So that's Roman numeral number 1 for our Lumdus, is going to be whether a Birchas HaMitzvah, listen carefully, is part and parcel of the mitzvah, or it's a separate entity. What would you say is going to be the nafkamina? Every chakira has to have a nafkamina. As the lawyers say in America, at least, it has to cut ice. That's the phrase they use in law. What would be the nafkamina, whether the bracha is part of the mitzvah or something separate, independent?
Whether brachos and mitzvahs are with each other.
Well, no, I might say that a bracha is not ma'akiv in the mitzvah, because we have a principle it's not ma'akiv in the mitzvah, but it's something that's part of the mitzvah. You know, there are many parts of the mitzvah, some of which are indispensable. They're absolutely required. Shall we say they're critical? There are other parts of the mitzvah which are not critical, but they're still part of the mitzvah.
Very simply, do you fulfill the mitzvah filling if you don't say the bracha?
Oh, no, that's what we just said. Okay, so let me get back to my question. He made the bracha at 6:59 a.m. 6:59 and another 55 seconds. He finished the bracha. It took him 5 seconds to make the bracha, and at 7 o'clock he puts on his tefillin. So again, he made the bracha on the tefillin when? Before the Zman HaChiyuv. But immediately following the bracha, he put on the tefillin. Did he fulfill the bracha? Is the bracha valid or not valid? Who can help me out here? Yeah.
I think as long as he does the actual mitzvah in the time frame.
No, again, I want to know whether he fulfilled his obligation to make the bracha, right?
Yeah,
Because
so
in this week's Parsha, yeah, go ahead.
the bracha was made on a mitzvah that was done on time. So I think the bracha is still fulfilled as long as the mitzvah is done.
Well, let's go back to our Chakir one more time. Our Chakir was the following. Is the bracha part of the mitzvah,
I think it's
or is it something separate and independent? What do you say?
I don't think it's half and half. It's separate in terms of you can make the bracha before this man as long as you're doing the mitzvah in this man, but it still has to be like mitzvah they do more something like that.
But here's my question. If the bracha is, we have to create a logical structure here.
Right.
Here are the logical rules. Rule number 1 is that a mitzvah is limited to the Zman HaMitzvah, except for those mitzvahs, as I said, that are 24/7. Correct? So I have to fulfill the mitzvah within a time frame. Now I have a second principle, and that is that anything that's part of the mitzvah is under the influence and the limitation of the mitzvah and requires what? The Zman mitzvah. Again, here are my 2 principles, A and B. Principle number 1 is that every mitzvah that has a Zman requires that the mitzvah be observed during the Zman. And that principle applies to anything that's part of the mitzvah. Now I go ahead and I say that if I have something that's part of the mitzvah, then it too is limited or shall we say generated by the Zman mitzvah. Again, you hear the second principle. Anything that's part of the mitzvah is, how shall I say, I'm looking for a word for l'shabed, is governed by, or I need another word here. Let's see if I can come up with another word. Is straitjacketed by the Zman mitzvah. Anything that's part of the mitzvah is limited to the Zman mitzvah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm very excited about this. If you didn't notice, I get very emotional about this. Again, if the Zman mitzvah determines the mitzvah, and you can't have the mitzvah without the Zman mitzvah, then anything that's integral to the mitzvah and it's part of the mitzvah is limited by the Zman mitzvah. But if I want to say that the bracha is not part of the mitzvah, this is a separate obligation to make a bracha. Again, what engenders that obligation to make a bracha? What is the background? For example, you have birchas haninim. I have an apple here. I want to eat the apple. So because I want to eat the apple, I have to make a bracha on the apple. Borei pri ha'etz. But now I'm doing a mitzvah and I have to make a bracha on the mitzvah. But the bracha remains a separate obligation. It's totally independent of the mitzvah. I might have to do it right near the mitzvah because otherwise, what's the relationship between my bracha and the mitzvah? But the bracha still stands on its own, independent. It has a life of its own. And if it has a life of its own, then it's not bound by the Zman mitzvah. So again, just to summarize, we have a chakira here, two definitions of birchas mitzvah. One definition is that birchas mitzvah is part and parcel of the mitzvah itself. The mitzvah is fulfilled with both the action of the mitzvah and the bracha. Give me 1 minute. And the other possibility is no. The bracha stands as something independent of the mitzvah. It's a separate obligation. Again, what occasions that obligation, what generates that obligation is the mitzvah. But nevertheless, once that obligation comes out and it's generated and it exists on its own, then it's an independent mitzvah. And I get brownie points and schar for that mitzvah bracha. So we're suggesting now that the nafkamina between these two definitions is whether or not the birchas mitzvah is bound by what? By the Zman mitzvah. If it's an integral part of what? Of the mitzvah. So the mitzvah itself now has two parts to it. It's got the action of the mitzvah and the bracha. Then, what would you say? If it's part of the mitzvah, then it should be bound by the Zman mitzvah. But if I suggest that, and again, I have to prove this to you, that the bracha separates itself from the mitzvah and emerges as an independent obligation, a new mitzvah on its own to recite a bracha, then it doesn't have to be limited and bound by the Zman mitzvah.
Yeah. Drawing.
What time do we have to end, by the way? I don't want to go over time.
6.
At 6?
Yeah, 6, 5.
Okay.
Or is it-
I'll let you out a little early. But, you know.
10.
Drawing a little bit.
I forget your name, I'm sorry.
It's solemn.
Bitzal. Okay, Bitzal, good. I'll have to learn the
I
name.
remember that some people say that a bracha is fulfilled as long as it is made in conjunction with something, even if the person. So, for example, there's some opinions that say that by a filas challah, when the person at the head of the table is making the bracha on the challah, if they make it and then eat the challah, even if somebody else down the table talks, that person can still then go on to eat the challah, even if they talked before they ate the challah, because the bracha was made on actual challah that was eaten.
Oh. Okay, Bitzal, you got me on that one. That would take me another couple of lectures to understand that. I just want to get by this one, you know. This is the first year, so I'm very nervous if you haven't noticed it, you know.
So I would.
I'm absolutely petrified.
I would.
We're gonna have fun, guys.
Let's go.
Okay. Who's gonna treat us to pizza? Yeah, good.
I was gonna say that I think they're kind of two different types of bracha or mitzvahs, in which, like, in some of them.
You want to break up birchas mitzvah into two categories?
Yeah, in some cases, I think the bracha itself is a main part of the mitzvah, and in others, the mitzvah is its own action and it's accompanied by a bracha. like for say this or tefillin, the main mitzvah is the action, but it has an accompanied bracha, but you can still sort of.
So what would be a case where the bracha is not just accompanying the mitzvah, but it's the mitzvah itself.
Birkat Hamazon.
Birkat Hamazon, excellent. You see, but Birkat Hamazon is not going to help us today. I'll tell you why, because Birkat Hamazon is not a zman, really. I mean, there's no particular point in time in Hilchas Zmanim, meaning if you have a calendar, there's no moment, you eat a meal, you chayv Birkas Hamazon. But you know what might be an example would be Birchas Kriyat Shema. Because Birchas Kriyat Shema is time bound. So, for example, if let's say the end of Zman Kriyat Shema is the third hour of the day, then if you make the bracha of Birchas Kriyat Shema after the third hour of the day, you would not fulfill your obligation. So here you have a mitzvah which equals a bracha, and a Zman binds the mitzvah, or the mitzvah is bound by the time. Somebody else wanted to say something? Okay. So let me tell you here that Rav Weiss, in this sefer, who remembers the name of the sefer? Minchas Asher, excellent. He wants to say that this whole discussion might depend upon another chakir. So, for those who are my time well with these chakir, sorry.
Oh, it's not your
Yeah, maybe a jet lag. Chakir number 2. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm hoping that you'll laugh me out of the base medrash and tell me about Berzon. This is the most ridiculous question I've ever heard in my life. That's what I'm hoping. Can a person be obligated in a mitzvah before the Zman Hachiv? No one's laughing at me. Come on, you're supposed to laugh at me. Now we're getting into it. Okay. Because what I just said to you is a contradiction in terms. What did I say to you? I said to you that there's a Zman HaChiyuv, and yet I'm obligated in the mitzvah before the Zman HaChiyuv. Are you off your rocker? Are you crazy? You just finished told me there's a Zman HaChiyuv. That means that there's no Chiyuv until the Zman HaChiyuv. Comes along Rav Weiss and says, no. You're obligated in the mitzvah before the Zman HaChiyuv. Now, if I didn't tell you that Rav Weiss said it, and I said it was Rabbi Berzon, then at that point you would give me the boot and say enough. Find a different yeshiva. No, really, I mean it seriously. You can't tell me that you're obligated in the mitzvah before the Zman of the mitzvah. Well, maybe you can. How? How can we make any logical sense about having an obligation to do a mitzvah before the Zman of mitzvah?
If it's to prepare for that.
Excellent. I almost lost. Do you like it with olives? Okay. Preparation. Now, here's my question. There's a shofar in Lakewood, New Jersey. There's no shofar in Edison, New Jersey, in this case. Do I have to pick myself up before Rosh Hashanah, pack my bags, and settle in Lakewood, New Jersey so that I can hear the shofar? A week before Sukkot, I can buy myself a lulav. If I don't buy myself a lulav and I wait until Sukkot, there's no lulav in the market. It's all gone. When is the Korban Pesach brought? Who remembers the date? The 14th of Nisan. Okay, now it's the 13th of Nisan, and I'm very far away. I'm up in Sfat. That's my only place. If I weren't in Yerushalayim, I'd want to be. I'm up in Sfat. Do I have to take a train to Yerushalayim so that I'll be there on the 14th of Nisan so that I can bring the Korban Pesach. Gentlemen, are you following my question? This is the question of Minchas Osher, which Amir Hashem will try to develop further tomorrow, but it's a very, very important question. Let's go back to our Chakira. What was our Chakira? Our Chakira was the following. Can I be obligated in a mitzvah before the Zman HaChiv? And what was our knee-jerk response? Absolutely not. It's ridiculous. You're contradicting yourself. You can't tell me this is Zman HaChiv, and now you can tell me, well, I'm obligated in the mitzvah before the Zman HaChiv. That's crazy.
Well, you complete the mitzvah lulav when you start shaking it or when you end.
Search or? I didn't hear you. When you
You have an obligation to shake lulav on once you go.
right.
Does that mitzvah completed when you start or when you end?
I'm not sure I follow you. What do you mean start and end?
When you
give me an
when
example.
you shake
Yeah.
forward or when you shake what's the last direction down?
You're talking about Nanuit. Nanuit means up and down and right and left and all that. I don't know exactly. You're asking me a profound question about Nanuim. I don't know. I'm not sure if you have to have Nanuim. I don't know. But I'm asking you a different question. When is the mitzvah of Lulav? On Sukkot, correct? Everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
Now it's Erev Sukkot. Do I have to buy myself a Lulav?
Yes.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm going to say the following. What grounds do you have? What basis do you have to obligate me to buy a lulav? There's a mitzvah of lulav. What is a mitzvah of lulav? There's no mitzvah of lulav. The mitzvah of lulav you just told me is on Sukkot. If the mitzvah of lulav emerges on Sukkot, then before Sukkot there is no mitzvah of lulav. That makes sense. If one of you gentlemen wants to tell me that there's no mitzvah of lulav before Sukkot, I'll give you Yashukov. You're 100% right. Of course, there's no mitzvah of lulav before Sukkot. The mitzvah of lulav is generated by the Chag and the Moed of Sukkot. It's a day before Sukkot. I'm not chayav. Now you tell me no. You got to buy yourself a lulav. What do you mean I have to buy myself a lulav? What obligates me to buy a lulav? The mitzvah of lulav. Yeah, but the mitzvah of lulav hasn't even emerged yet. We're not even chayav in the mitzvah of lulav. And this question, says Rav Weiss, is going to come up over and over and over again. In Ritz Hashem, tomorrow, we're going to give a whole bunch of examples, but just write down the following examples. Number one, do I have to buy a lulav before Sukkot? Or can I say, well, I'm not obligated to this. I don't have to worry about lulav. Come Sukkot, and guess what? I go out to the marketplace, and how many lulavs are there in the marketplace? Zippo. Do I have to relocate in order to find myself on Rosh Hashanah in a city that has a shofar? Or do I say no? Right now, it's not Rosh Hashanah. I'm not obligated in the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah. I don't have a mitzvah of shofar. If I don't have a mitzvah of shofar, why are you telling me to relocate? Or in the case of Korban Pesach. Okay, then. So, gentlemen, the class is officially over. Anybody who wants to stay around for another 5 minutes or so and ask questions or comments, I'm here.
It seems like the principle we've arrived at.
Just, if you can raise your voice and drop.
It seems like the principle we've arrived at is we're always obligated at all times in every mitzvah.
Right.
The obligation is just
Right.
is to make sure that we are able to.
Excellent. So maybe today, how many weeks are we before Sukkot? It's about 6 weeks, what? Maybe today, what, 5 weeks?
5, 6.
Whatever it is. Maybe today I have to go buy myself a lulav. Again, you have to put it in deep freeze, I don't know. But I have to buy myself a lulav so that I'm guaranteed to have a lulav 5 weeks down the line. Because if I wait till tomorrow, all the lulavs are gone. I don't know. That sounds crazy.
I don't think obviously the actual mitzvah of lulav doesn't happen before Sukkot, but it's not necessarily a mitzvah per se, but God says that you have to follow the mitzvah.
Excellent.
So in order to fulfill that commandment,
Yeah, yes,
part of the actual
That's
mitzvah,
really.
you have to make
that's
sure
true.
that you're into it.
But I hope nobody heard you, because that's going to be Rav Weiss's breakthrough tomorrow. So stay tuned. You know what I mean? keep you in suspense a little. Any other comments, questions? Okay, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Yes. Oh yeah, I have to make one more announcement. Please bring the pages tomorrow,
Anytime you're ready.
Okay. because tomorrow we want to really look inside.
Thank you, everybody.
I have no idea if this worked, but
You'll be able to save it somewhere in here.
Yeah, we leave the